this doesn't work out. But
Oh,
Alright.
The only song Oh, what?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I listened to like his entire discography today.
Oh god. hopefully it was enjoyable.
The only one I heard is This Groove, and I listened to that like on repeat.
Nice. Yeah, this groove's pretty good, but he has some other pretty banging tunes, you know.
I'm a huge like Oliver Heldens guy, so
Right. So Ben, do you have the recording stuff
Yep, everything's set up.
ready to go?
Yep.
Very nice. I will be scheduling a Zoom meeting in the unlikely event that this doesn't work out, but we'll see.
okay.
Welcome. Hello. Welcome, Lenno. Glad to have you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
hello.
Yeah, I'm like trying to get my audio to work. I don't know.
Yeah, no
if it
worries.
is coming through.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, so
I think it is. Sorry,
go ahead.
let me just play something. See if this comes through as well. Wait.
yeah, it's coming through. It's a little bit choppy, but
Okay.
Yeah, I think you might have to adjust the input sensitivity.
Right. Let's see. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Actually, it might actually be better if I do this on, like, if I send you a streaming link to the audio, because it's probably, I don't know like how the quality is gonna be.
gotcha. Yeah.
Discord also allows you to stream your like screen and stuff. I don't know if that would be helpful.
Yeah. Let's see.
It's like in the bottom left. It says like share your screen. That might be a little less choppy.
Actually, it says I have to quit because I'm letting it like have new permissions. So yeah, I'll be back in a second.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. So are we doing cameras on, or are we just gonna?
I'm down. I'll put my
All right.
camera on if you guys.
All right, I'll put my camera on. So we seem like real people. Yes.
Hold on. Let's see.
So yeah, how is this going to work?
Somehow, let's see.
Is it gonna be like through like Twitch or something, or? Okay.
I don't even know. Like,
Yeah, just it works for you.
let me see if I can actually. Wait. Can I get video as well? Yeah, there we go.
Nice.
Yeah, I've like never tried this in Discord before.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know like how the audio is gonna be. Like if it's like super.
Have you used like other meeting? Have you used like Zoom before to share your screen?
Yeah, I have. I mean, like, I want to give this a try because Zoom is a pain in the ass as well.
Right.
Because yeah, I mean, like the audio and all of them is kind of like annoying. But if the audio is like, if it's too choppy, then I'll just do it on audio movers. I'll send you guys a link and put like this plugin in my master that will stream the master.
Okay, awesome.
Anyway, yeah, let's try this out. This is just like the track that I thought might be interesting to talk about.
Yep, it's working pretty well.
Yeah,
How's the sound quality itself?
Yeah,
pretty good.
Sounds good to me.
not like
Okay, cool.
perfect, but pretty dang good.
Yeah. It's good enough. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool.
Hey Leno, by the way, is it cool if we record this for like the people who can't make it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Alright.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna. Yeah, they're like you can like put it online as well if you want to.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, I don't know
yeah.
if there's any kind of structure to what we're gonna do.
Yeah, not really. It's kind of up to you. But I was just gonna ask, like, before we get started, do you wanna like tell us a little bit about like your musical journey? Because
Yeah,
I've read a little
absolutely.
bit about it online, but it sounds really interesting. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. My real name is Lenno as well. It's Lenno Linjama, Linjama. Well, yeah. I kind of started with guitar. When I was very little. I started with like classical guitar when I was 7, and then moved on to electric at like 11, I think, and then started to play in the shittiest school bands and started to want to record them, and that's how I started to like mess around with GarageBand. But yeah, pretty quickly after that. So I was born in 95. So like, yeah, I want to say like 2008 or something. I started like messing around with electronic music. For the first time, through hearing about it in like Future Music magazine, which was like the only way to get information about music making at the time. Because I like literally like I would like buy Logic after using GarageBand for a couple of years, and didn't know how to use it. Bought these magazines thinking they would let me, like, they would teach me how to use it. But yeah, through that, like, I found out about electronic music, and just started messing around with it. And then, yeah, like, at the same time, like, with the guitar stuff, I was, like, really into sort of, like, older, like, funk, soul, disco kind of music. And that sort of, like, I mean, it was not, like, a light bulb moment. It was more like a gradual thing. Sort of, like, started bringing those influences into my thing. Then, yeah, there was not, like, there was not, like, a binary moment where it sort of, like, flipped the switch and it suddenly became, like, a thing. It was more like, yeah, I started taking part in some remix competitions, and then like I had one remix was like didn't make it to the competition actually, but like ended up getting heard by a manager that I still work with. And then like that manager started getting me some official remixes, and that was sort of the time around 2012, 13 when like indie bands and remixes for indie bands like Foster People and the Wombats and stuff like that was like it was just starting off with Hype Machine and stuff like that. Oh, it had been going on for a bit already, but that was sort of the wave that I jumped on at first. And then I don't know, like then just after that, like I started doing some more remix work, and they started getting like SoundCloud and Hype Machine were sort of like the two main things at the time. Like they started getting noticed on both, and yeah, then started making my own music. Started putting out some original stuff, and then after that, sort of like touring for a while. Doing a bunch of my own stuff. Started sort of like, not really like, I wasn't getting burnt out, but like, felt like it wasn't necessarily like all I wanted to do all the time, like my own stuff. So after that, like I started doing some sessions for my own thing, and then realized that like writing and production is sort of like the most fun part for me personally. So that's sort of like what I've been going towards in the past couple of years as well, is like writing and production for others. Like I've been doing quite a lot of DJ stuff actually, because it's it feels natural for me to be in the be the mediator between songwriters and the DJ in the session. So I've been doing quite a lot of stuff with Oliver Heldens and quite a few things for Steve, and yeah, just like all kinds of production and writing. But yeah, sort of like that's it's funny, like that's kind of become my day job now, and that in turn has let me like just do whatever I want with the artist project, which in turn has led to the artist project doing better than ever. So it's like I've become to find that like trying too hard can be a bad thing, and like not caring can be a good thing in the like grand scheme of things. But yeah, so now I'm like, now I've been doing this full time for almost 7 years now. So it's definitely like I don't think there's like I don't know, like it doesn't make any sense to me, but yeah, it's a lot of fun, and of course like it takes a lot of like planning and a team to like get this whole thing going, but I'm very happy with where we are right now, where I can like get to do this every day, but also like I don't have to be like, not everything I do has to be like a huge success, because I can still like I still do the like writing and production for others. Of course, some of that has to be a success for all of it to work, but so far like people come back to me for more stuff, so it seems to be working out. So yeah, so my own music is kind of like I've had a hard time describing it, because like none of the descriptions make sense on their own, because it's kind of like it's definitely like disco influence, but it's also like a bit like more like a lot more modern than some of the like new disco stuff that is coming out. And it's also kind of housey, but not really housey, and like some of the tempos are kind of like in that territory, and it has a 4-to-the-floor kick drum. But so yeah, if anybody has any suggestions on what to call any of this, let me know.
Yeah, I think I called it like funky house music, but that doesn't really give the full picture. So
yeah, exactly. It's like that's like one part of it. But yeah, I don't know. Like, do we want to? I can talk about a lot of things. I can jump onto the project walkthrough, but it's also like I kind of want to like. I can also like I don't know, like if there's any like questions or like general topics that you would like to be discussed. I have a lot to say about like loudness and mixing, and if mixing even matters, and sound selection, and how to like how to be creative when you're not feeling like it.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, those are all topics that we like to talk about. Maybe we could have like one just like go into like a couple projects, or like just talk about a specific song, and then maybe you can move into some Q&A type stuff.
Yeah,
that sounds good.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Cool.
So yeah, let me know if the sound quality is like, if it doesn't make any sense, then I can jump over to the I can send you guys the audio movers link. Let me see. We'll turn down the input, or turn up the input sensitivity. Let's see if this helps. Yeah. So. Yeah, so what we're looking at here is a remix I did for the Knox and Muna for their new song Bodies. yeah, there's actually a fun one because it's kind of a full circle moment. The reason why my manager started working with me was because of the Knox, or Ben from the Knox. Is that a sound that I should be worried about? No.
No, don't worry about that.
It sounded like everything was shutting off. So the remix competition that I mentioned, like one of them was for Future Cop, and which is like this synthwave 80s kind of band, who were managed by my manager Alex at the time. So I took part in the competition, sent my remix in. For some reason, it didn't make it to the competition at all, but they found my remix like a couple of months after. And then like Alex was playing it in the room because he was friends with the Knox and actually like tour managed them for a while. So he was playing the remix in the room, and then Ben from the Knox was like, "Yo, this is cool. What is this?" And that was sort of the impetus for Alex to reach out to me, because Ben from the Knox said that something was cool. So then, yeah, I've actually done this the third time or fourth. Yeah, this is the fourth time I've done a remix for the Knox. Yeah, I've been lucky enough to do that. Yeah, the first one was like almost 10 years ago now. Like it was one of the first remixes I ever did, and so yeah, I'm happy that like I get to do it again, because it's also a great song. So yeah, let's just have a little listen to what this does, and then I can sort of like show the individual parts.
It's another suburban summer. The streetlights blink on. If you're passing the house on the corner, you think no one's home. But when I feel that resonation, waving with the weight, thrown bodies in the basement. And when you swing my way, won't wait, no way, no way, won't bodies in the basement. When I feel that 808, won't waving with the weight, won't bodies in the basement. And when you swing my way, won't wait, no way, no way, won't bodies in the basement. Bodies in the basement. I'm still thinking about that summer, trying to wake up alone. Keep on passing the house on the corner, but there's nobody home. But when I feel that resonation, waving with the weight, thrown bodies in the basement. And when you swing my way, won't wait, no way, no way, won't bodies in the basement. When I feel that 808, you're waving with the weight, won't bodies in the basement. And when you swing my way, won't wait, no way, no way, won't bodies in the basement. Your body on mine, body on mine. My body's in the basement. Your body on mine, body on mine. My body's in the basement. Your body on mine, body on mine. My body's in the basement. Your body on mine, body on mine. My body's in the basement. Bodies in the basement.
Right. So that's sort of the whole thing, actually. So where it actually, so yeah, most of the time when I start out, I will, let's see, where's the vocal? This is, by the way, how I organize stuff is like by not organizing anything at all. So it's a headache to like when I'm working on it, everything makes perfect sense. But then when I come back to it like a couple of months later, nothing makes sense at all. Just trying to find the vocal. Oh, there we go. The thing that says Vox might be the vocal. So most of the time when I start out with a remix, well, first of all, like this was amazing because I got like a whole lot of stems. Actually, let me see if I can share my whole screen instead. Right. Now you can say hi to yourselves on the screen. It says my quality is worse than usual for some. Oh, okay, there we go. Also, let me know if this is like doubling up the sound now.
It's another suburban song.
Seems fine.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was lucky because they gave me like everything. Sometimes like you only get the vocal, which is kind of boring, but like here, like you can see the amount of stems that I got, and it's like all like impeccably mixed as well. By Dan Gray, who is like a great UK mixing engineer. So the first thing I would usually do is like just play the vocal on their like all the vocals on their own, and start like usually I like to not to listen to the original too much because then like I can just like try and find some new chords, which is like the most exciting thing about making remixes, like to like try to put the vocal and the music in a new context. So that's why like did here like change the chords a little bit. I would like just play the chords and loop and like try and find some chords on the keyboard that will work. And sometimes I don't even like play the keyboard. Like sometimes I'll just like have some like old MIDI files that I put in the same key as the vocal and just like put like random MIDI files over the vocal to see if there's anything. That's sounding cool because it's easy to fall into these patterns, especially if they're earlier. Not a great keyboardist. This I'm not. It's easy to fall into these patterns and play all the same stuff all over and over. So I find like, yeah, having a folder of MIDI files for, I don't know, stuff you've done before or stuff from your favorite records, like it can be really helpful to like try and unlock some new chord progressions. So what I would do is find, actually, yeah, I made this little like kind of like part of my process usually is to try and make these little vintage sounding samples. So this is the thing that I did, or like I would find the chord progression and then like pretty much right after that I would like make this sample thing out of it. So I can actually show you that project as well. And the reason why I do this in a separate project is kind of twofold, actually. it's because yeah, first of all, because like I just like the sound of like chopped up stuff, and it's like, yeah, the only way to get the chopped up sound is to actually chop something up. But I also like the fact that it sort of like locks some parameters in. Like after this, like I have the guitar and the synth, and like everything is bounced into one, and I have to work with that. And I find that like having those kind of like limitations on the creative side, I think is healthy, because like especially with DAWs and stuff, like you have so many options available to you at all times that it can be a bit daunting. So if you have like, if you're decided on the progression, and if you're decided on the instrumentation, and just the fact that like you can't like tweak the MIDI in the middle of the mixing process, like I find that like compartmentalizing the different parts can be healthy. So yeah, this is like what I would do at the very start. There's the sort of main synth. Well, that's correctly. So just the like, it's kind of a simple saw synth, but it has like this kind of cool punch to it. I can't remember where this sound is from. It's like an older pulse synth sound that I have. Then there's some layers. This is actually a good, one of my like favorite tips to give, is that like if you look at the layers here, like the MIDI is different on all of them. And for example, this one is like super simple, just like 2 notes. If we listen to it on sound, because it's kind of this like belly, kind of like more like a lot of overtones and stuff going on. Like if you play the whole chords and a sound like this, it might become a bit too much. So like just having like one or 2 notes on like a layer like this can like really help with making it come alive. I mean, it's very subtle, but yeah. And then there's a brass with some vibrato, and this also has like a different MIDI to the main one. So I find that's a good way to get like a bit more rich textures, and also like just some like, yeah, if you layer like 8 different tracks with like all the same MIDI, it's gonna sound a little bloated and like just a little boring, I find. So yeah, spreading out the MIDI to different and it doesn't really have to be like super methodical. Like you can just like literally like on Logic, like you have this key command for selecting the top note of the MIDI. You can like literally just like try like moving things around up and down in octaves and see like when you find something cool. And another cool tip is to like try and retain, like do one layer where like the notes move as little as possible between the different chords. That way you get some like solidity and cohesion between all the different chords in the progression. I mean, obviously it's not like, sometimes it's really cool to like really move between the chords, but like if you want to get like some like if you want to ground it a little bit more, that can be helpful. So yeah, that's the synth riff. Then some guitar. Which is just, yeah, me playing this track. And this is once again like a different sort of like different progression, or like same progression but like different voicings on the same progression. So it adds like another color. If I would just play the same chords as here, I mean that wouldn't be possible for a guitar, but like if I was playing like this like same kind of shapes, it would be kind of boring. But yeah, I find that's like a really good way of like getting over chord progressions, even if it's kind of basic chords. Like here, like spreading it out across different instruments is gonna give you textures and sounds that you haven't heard before. Oh shit. Then there's the bass, which kind of moves around quite a lot. A lot of these like little ghost notes. Is the Repro 5, which is like one of my favorite synths for sort of analog, like actually analog sounding synths. Then some claps, a little bell thing, snare. Quite a lot of like reverb on this one. Lindrum hi-hat and boogie kick. I can't remember where this is from. That's what it says. And then this is like just a little vocal thing from Splice. There's like Masters of Soul. Yeah, there's quite a lot of like really cool like old sounding packs on Splice. And then like yeah, there's a bit of tape on all the tracks, like just a little tape saturation to get it to like get a bit of the edge off of everything. And yeah, this is how it all comes together. Yeah. So I've done this in a slower tempo. The actual track is in 119. And yeah, I've done it in one step lower as well, so that when I speed it up to 119, it's gonna be in the right key. So yeah, that's that. Then I have a bit of like tape and vinyl and tube compression emulation on the master. I find that like if you're going sort of like for sort of like old school, like vintage, a little bit like saturated, more like yeah, a little bit less clean sound, I find it's like helpful to try and do that in like small amounts on a bunch of different effects rather than like trying to put one effect on that will do the whole thing. Like I find it's yeah, helpful to try and do it across multiple plugins. Right. So don't save. And also, if anybody gets any questions at any time, like feel free to yeah, pause me, because it's more interesting for me as well to like try and explain stuff rather than just like go through it all in one go. So then like yeah, I would bounce down the sample and put it in the project, and it sort of becomes the backbone of the whole thing. So like here also in the chorus part,
When I feel that 808, waving with the weight, bodies in the basement. And when you swing my
like what makes it tick is like the sample in the background. Just
I got a quick question. What's
Yep.
the advantage of like pulling it in as audio rather than just like leaving it all as MIDI and then just building around that?
Well, this is the advantage is that like I can like if I were to like do it in MIDI, well, actually, this is not the main advantage. Let me show you the main advantage, which is this. So like there's just like, to me anyway, there's not really a way to get that kind of a sound, like sort of like that chopped up like super tight chops and like these bursts of information, like like it starts and stops really quickly, and there's a lot of like little like chops like that. There's not really a way to get that with MIDI, or you would have to do it like you would have to put it in a bus and like then automate it, and like it would just get really confusing. So to me, like bouncing it down to audio and then resampling it into this, it's just like the sound that I'm after. But it also it also comes with like the advantage of you lock certain things down, which I find is really helpful, because then like it's sort of a mental thing. Like you can't worry about the length of the MIDI notes or like the levels and the balances of stuff. After you've kind of decided that this is good, then you sort of have the mental permission to sort of like call it finished. So yeah, I find it also like it's mostly because of the sound that I'm going for, but it's also like it helps me finish that faster, because like I have to like commit, which can be tough if everything you're doing is in MIDI. I mean, like I'll still have a lot of MIDI tracks as well. Like I have the bass in MIDI and probably some chords. Actually, no chords in this part, but chords here. Or actually, that's it. That's bounced down as well. So yeah, I find that I want to try and bounce stuff down as I go along. I don't need to do it because of the CPU thing anymore. I used to do it also because of CPU, but now I have a new computer and I can actually run and stream and do everything at the same time. So yeah, it's like first and foremost, it's a like sonic thing, but it also comes with a lot of positive things. So I would recommend trying that out. Like even if it's not like for this kind of sound, like committing to audio at an early stage, like you can burn yourself if you want to like change the tempo and like change the key afterwards. But like what I do often is just like bounce it down, and then either like save an alternative version of the project where I keep the MIDI, or like hide the MIDI tracks somewhere in the project so I can still go back to them if I want to. So yeah, here as well, like that's the sample once again. So it's kind of like it goes through quite a lot of processing. So I would like probably like when I'm done with the sort of like the sample loop, I will put it behind the vocal and just see how it sits, and like if I've like done it the right way, then I'll slot right in, which it did luckily here. So yeah.
I notice you're an intellectual. You have sausage fattener on the on the bus there.
Yeah, it's like it's one of my favorite things actually, for like when I have it's actually kind of high up as well, like 31%. The sausage is not very angry yet, but it's like it's getting in there. So it's let's go through the processing, because it's kind of interesting. So yeah, I'm like the thing that I'm thinking of when I'm sort of like doing these chopped up things is always like Ed Banger and like Sebastian. If you haven't heard, like just go look up Sebastian on Ed Banger. Like all of his stuff is amazing. It's like very aggressive and distorted and chopped up. I'm not quite as hard. He goes like super hard, but like I'm kind of like, that's the aesthetic that I have in the back of my mind when I'm making these kind of things. So I started out with the Wolf compressor, which is one of my favorite things. It's like the signature plugin for Wolfpack, this like funky internet band. And the cool thing about this, well, it's kind of emulating a vinyl effect from an old Roland sampler, but the cool thing is like you get this wow thing, which like is actually done in a really like, it's a kind of a lo-fi plugin, but the wow thing is done in a really hi-fi way. So it's like very smooth, but it gives you this like really subtle I mean, if you turn it up, it's not subtle, but it gives you this like wobble wow effect in the pitch. So I find it's a cool way to like get a little bit of movement into something that's kind of static otherwise. So if you turn it up way up, then it's like, yeah, all over the place. But I just use it like subtly to get a bit of movement. And also this like compression does a lot of things. Like it like brings up the low level detail and it adds a bit of punch and it just like smushes everything into one. Then I have OTT, which is also a sign of being an intellectual. I mean, it's kind of like low. It's at 21%, but yeah, I find like there's something about the combination of Wolf compressor into OTT that just works for me. I guess the Wolf compressor kind of like makes everything mushy and like kind of lo-fi, but then the OTT kind of like brings back some detail, but all the sharp edges are now gone, and it's just like this one tight package of sound. Then I have some. Actually, it's kind of interesting. Apparently, yeah, I'm boosting some of the low mids, like around 380, but it's with a dynamic EQ, so it's only like it gets pushed down when it gets too hard. When it gets too high. Yeah. Then yeah, I like using sausage fattener for something like this because it's kind of like it doesn't really kill your transients in a way that a limiter would. It just like boosts everything. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend like sausage fattener on the master unless you really know what you're doing. But like for something like this, like bringing up and like solidifying like a single element, I find it's great. It's just like, yeah, turn it up a little bit too high and then back it off a little, and then you can get things to like really be more solid that way. I mean, you can get it from like clipper and some saturation and I don't know, like a limiter, like a combination of things, but there's already a combination of things. So yeah, as long as you're being careful, because it will ruin stuff as well if you're not being careful. But like if you have good monitoring and it makes things sound better, like go for it. So you can tell that everything is kind of like solid in one place, and then some big crushing just to give it like sort of like, I find that big crushing is a really good way of getting some high frequency detail into things that don't have it. Like it adds this like little layer of fizz above everything. Like I guess it's like half the sample rate. If anyone has been reading like about Nyquist and the sampling theorem, yeah, like you start getting the artifacts at like half the sample rate, unless you enable the anti-aliasing filter, which I'm purposefully not doing. And then I'm blending it in at 50%, so it's not like all like digital like top end. But yeah, if I'm doing it a little bit, like it really like accentuates the like little high frequency stuff that's going on. And it's actually funny, like if you listen to a lot of like modern pop music, you can hear it a lot in that as well. Like I find that like, yeah, a lot of like they'll put like the lead vocal through a big crusher to get it like a little bit of digital like sort of like grit to it, or like just hi-hats or whatever. It happens a lot in modern pop production as well. Then I have a compressor as well, just to, I guess, to bring out the low-level detail even more. And this is kind of the thing, like, it's bringing out detail that's a combination of like 8 different things, but then I'm also chopping it up. So it's this really like kind of interesting interplay between like all these little things happening at the same time, but also getting cut off, and then all these compressors bringing up the detail. So yeah, it's a kind of it's an incremental process, but yeah, that's the way it's working out for me. Then there's just a clipper called Spiral. This is a free one. It's kind of interesting because it's very like it has a very smooth action. So I find it's very useful for something like this where I don't want it to sound like it's been clipped, but for some reason I put it here. It's not like if the input gain is at 0.5, then it's not doing any additional gain. But yeah, actually, it's interesting. Yeah, this comes to like when I was talking about loudness. There's actually one of my like key points for loudness is that like you want to be controlling your peaks, because then by the time you hit your master bus, like you don't need to do much to get the mix to be loud. Or of course, loudness is a combination of like the dynamic information and the frequency information. And this doesn't solve the frequency information problem, but like this is a good way of getting more headroom. Like literally, like it doesn't really change the sound. When I enable the clipper now. But if you look at the levels here, like now I'm at minus 12.6, and I saw it pop, like if I turn it off, we're at 6.6. So literally just by turning on this clipper, I gain 6 dBs of headroom, and there's like 6 dBs less work for the mastering or for the master bus to do. So I find that like if you're shaving off the peaks and like you're being like mindful of them when you're working on a track, then by the time you're coming to the master bus, like you don't need to do as much. I mean, like it's still, yeah, there's still. I mean, this went to a mastering engineer, so I would take the limiter off. But like, if you look here, if you turn down the gain on the limiter. You can see that everything is kind of like at a uniform level. Like there's not like a lot of big peaks and dips happening. Everything's kind of hitting, even though I'm not doing any limiting yet. So yeah, I think that's something to be mindful of, and yeah, controlling your peaks and transients in a way that like makes them compact. And that's something that like that's not in a lot of the literature, because like back in the old days, like if you were working on tape and consoles, like they wouldn't let all those like crazy little like super quick peaks go through. Like you would just like naturally get rid of them. But nowadays I find that like even if you're not working with like real drums or something like that, even if you're working just in the box, like especially if you're working just in the box, like I find it's really important to try and like control your peaks if you want to get a competitively loud mix. Or like you can also just smash it with sausage partner in the masher, but like if you want to get some more like if you want to get something that's nuanced and has like a lot of detail but also loudness, I find that's the way to go. Then I have this EQ and Kickstart, which just this like sidechain effect without actually having to use sidechain. I find it's a little bit cleaner, and you can also like make sure that you're actually ducking out pretty much all of the sample or the sound. Yeah, so I use Kickstart most of the time, unless I'm doing some none for the floor stuff. Yeah, so that's sort of the main riff. Then I have the same bass, or not the same bass. Oh yeah, the bass line is the same, but the sound is different. I'm using the Arturia DX7, which has this like factory preset sound, which is like the most amazing bass sound ever. It doesn't sound like super exciting on its own, but it just always works. It has this kind of like, especially if you play it harder, it has this like kind of digital feel to it, but yeah, it just always works. Then it goes through this guy, which is just an SSL from Brainworks. A lot of lows being boosted. I like working on these things. I mean, I don't use it enough. I should use it more, but yeah, I like using something like this where you have like the compression and the gate and the filters and the EQ and everything is at the same place, so you don't need to like be jumping between different plugins. Then I have this layer which looks like it's from the Oliver serum. Yeah, Oliver Power Tools 2. It's like, yeah, one of the best sample packs ever made, in my opinion. So the bass sounds like this. Kind of gives this like vocoder, or not even a vocoder, it's more like a talk box. Kind of gives this like, and it's like the LFO or something is moving the formant as well. So it has this like micro level movement, which gives it interesting. And yeah, like here, yeah, it doesn't have a lot of low end because most of the low end is coming from the DX bass, so they combine quite nicely. Yeah. And then there's drums. Yeah, sorry, go for it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ben.
Okay. So like I see like that you layer a lot of things with like different instruments and stuff. Do you ever like run out of ideas?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Like it kind of comes naturally at this stage, but I'm also like constantly trying to find some new ideas because like I kind of do the same thing always, which is kind of like I mean, not the same thing, but like I kind of have these like patterns in my head about what works, so I know what to go for. For example, like yeah, with a bass, like I'll try and like have one solid bass, and then like all the other bass layers, I will roll out the bass. But I guess that's sort of like elementary, like that's something that I will do always. Like I won't have like 3 different basses and an 808 all playing in the low end because it will just like it will start phasing and like they will clash with each other. So yeah, there's not really a like, especially as I get into these chops here, there's not really like a guideline that I'm going for, but yeah, definitely sometimes it's like, yeah, I won't know what to do, but I find that like literally just like scrolling through presets and playing on top of it, like just smashing on the keyboard and like, yeah, I find it's a lot of like just brute forcing if I don't get an idea right away. It's just like, yeah, try and trigger a response from my brain, like play some interesting sounds and yeah, scroll through presets. But of course, like if you're just like, I'm not layering for the sake of layering, I'm layering if I'm missing something. So if it already feels good, I'm not like putting a sound on just for the sake of it.
Right.
So yeah, that's sort of like my process on it. I guess like, yeah, I guess like, yeah, trying and flipping the MIDI if you want to just like amp up a sound, like I think that's a really helpful way, like I showed in the other project, like yeah, trying to find different combinations, and also like try and find like these opposites. Like if you have a warm synth pad, like maybe something that has a bit more of a like a bell like top end, or something that has like a bit sharper top end, like, or maybe like if you have a very digital sounding track, like maybe trying a mellotron on, like something that like sort of kind of supplements and like does a different thing than the main thing. I find like, yeah, trying to think of it from that perspective. Actually, yeah, that's something that I do quite a lot, is that like I have a sound that's missing something, I'm trying to think like what's at a basic level, like what's something that sounds different to this that would benefit it. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. Let's look at the drums quick. These are kind of basic. I'm sure it looks like I'm using quite a lot of stuff from my own sample pack as well. which is on Splice if anybody wants to get it. So I mean, I don't need to check any of this stuff. Yeah, there's the kick. And this is the kick just on its own. Yeah, shorten it a little bit, fade out the tail so it doesn't do the click. Yeah. Then I have some transient designer, just adding some punch. This is one of my favorites because it also has this soft clip thing. That's something, yeah, once again, clipping already at the source. So yeah, that's one thing that's helpful. Like if you're using transient designers to get more punch out of something, like I find it's helpful to like clip it afterwards because otherwise you're gonna get like crazy levels. But if you like, even if you like boost, even if it doesn't technically get any louder, like this probably doesn't. Yeah, it stays at the same level. But just doing this, like when you clip it, you get this impression of like, yeah, because you get like new energy. Because even if you just like boost it and clip it, then like the clipping is gonna introduce some new harmonics and it's gonna sound more interesting. So yeah, that's a good way of like getting more punch out of something without boosting the level too much. And then there's a snare. Now here I'm doing some multiband transient designing just to get some more yeah, on the mids, like boosting the attack and turning down the sustain just gives it a bit more punch. But only doing it in the mids because I probably felt that it only needed it there. Yeah, all the other bands are just staying the same. So this has the benefit of like not messing around with the low end or the top end, but you just get this crack and it turns down the sort of like tail of the snare as well. So it's just a bit more tight. And then this is an EQ. Yeah, like showing EQ moves doesn't really make any sense because not that there's anything to hide, but like it's always so like specific to the track and the mix and the key that like I'm never telling anyone to like cut 6 dB at 800 hertz. That will make your snare sound better. It made my snare sound better in this instance, but like, yeah, if you ever see those like EQ cheat shits, like, yeah, they don't look at them. I mean, like, it's helpful to know like what kind of energy lives in which area, but like, yeah, don't believe anyone who tells you to do something because you can always find an example where doing that move didn't work. Then I have this snare on another track where it's just a bit of room reverb from the AMS. Very muffled, actually, just to add a little bit of like width and.
Oh, so do you typically EQ just by ear then?
Yeah, I mean that's I think that's the only way really. Like, I mean I will have the analyzer open when I'm working on it, but I think like, yeah, if you look at, I mean Eric Valentine is like this sort of like, it's not old school, but like he used to do a lot of stuff in the early 2000s, and he's still amazing. But like if you look at him like showing some old stuff on YouTube, like you will see these all kinds of like super wacky like 30 dB boosts and 30 dB cuts and like kick drums and snares and stuff. So yeah, I find that's just something that like there's not really a methodology for it. Like it's of course, like you can find like harsh frequencies and turn them down and like find the stuff that feels good and turn it up. Like that's kind of like the whole point of an EQ, but like, yeah, that's one of the things that I wish I could like, that there was like more, there was like a methodology of that would work, but I find that it's like, yeah, literally just like, if something bothers you, EQ, and if you have monitoring in order in some way, like that will hopefully work out. But yeah, it's kind of hard to like put into words what I'm doing or like why I would. I mean, this kind of makes sense because this is kind of very thin hi-hat, so I was just like turning down some of the highs, but it always depends on the context. Like this would be a great hi-hat for something that needed like a brighter thing, but then like here I wanted everything to like smooth, so that's what I ended up doing, is turning up some of the highest frequencies. So that's the hi-hat. It's from Logic's Apple Loops, called Classic Disco Hi-Hat. And it's cool because you can tell that it's an actual human being playing the hi-hat. It like if you look real close, you can see that all of these are slightly different. And I find that like, even though it's like a very tightly quantized loop, like it still has these like micro variations that like if everything else is a sample, like it is here, like just putting one loop where there's a little bit of variation going on, like can help it come alive. And then there's this. Which is just from the Oliver Power Tools spec, which just adds a bit of like snap. Yeah, it's kind of subtle, but it makes a difference in the grand scheme of things. There's another layer and another layer. And another one. So this is actually, this is kind of the way that I approach drums, is to find a solid backbone to build on. Like these are sort of like very basic solid sounds, but then I have like all these layers that don't sound great on their own, but like when you put them together, sort of like, with the sort of more solid basic sounds, it sort of like combines nicely. And then let's talk about the drum bus. This is all like the order of things would be probably like I would chop up the sample, then put some drums behind it, and then do the bass line. And then like once I had the groove going, like I would start with the kick and the snare and then start putting in the loops. Then after like I have the groove going, I will do some like processing on the drum bus as well. And my thinking behind it is sort of like trying to get this like collection of samples from different sources, try and make them sort of like interact and speak with each other, and like putting a compressor on it so it starts pumping and it sort of starts to sound like it doesn't sound like it's a drummer in a room, but like that's the sort of energy that I'm going for. So let's take everything off. I don't know how that's going to translate over the connection, but in my end, like it's just like it gets more hi-fi. It sounds kind of louder, even though it gets like 6 dB lower or 8 dB lower. So if any of you use Logic, like be sure to use these like vintage EQs. They're actually really well done. And the cool thing is like you can tune them up and down, so like you don't have to be locked into the frequency selections that they have from the start, but this is like an API emulation that they have going on. And yeah, API EQs are nice for drums. I think there's just something about them that like the curves seem to work with drums quite often. So I'm cutting out some of the low mids at 300, which is or 400. This is like one of the only tips I'll give that like EQ wise is that like cutting 400 from your drum bus on an API EQ it often works. And then I'm boosting the top end and cutting down some 6K. This is on the drum bus, so it will affect all the drums. And that's actually another point that I like to do is that like try and do these moves which will sort of like affect all the drums so they start sounding more like they belong together. Then I have this, which is like crazy compression, but it's only at like 10%. So once again, it's bringing up the low level detail and kind of gluing everything together. Yeah, it's very subtle even here in my room and with like great monitors, so it's probably not going to come over. But like what it does is it's just like adds a bit more energy and sort of like makes everything come together. This is one of my favorite things to do. So this is just another way of doing the multiband transient designer thing that I was showing earlier. But what this lets you do is this pump thing, which like, you can see here, like it right after the attack. Yeah, here it says it. The amount of attenuation directly after the transient, emphasizing the transient without increasing the level. So let's see. That's what it does. But I'm doing that once again with just the mid range. It's kind of subtle, but it's these little moves that add up. So this is something that I would do if I felt like I don't need to boost the mid or the high mids with an EQ because the frequency balance itself feels fine already, but I just want to get some more crack and punch and like click out of the drums in that area. So if you feel like the drums don't have enough impact, but boosting them in that area doesn't work, then try a transient designer in that area. You can usually get the isotope neutron elements thing for like either $30 or for free. I think I got it for free at the start. So, and that has a multiband transient designer, so you don't have to pay for it most of the time. And then there's this, which is just I think I'm clipping at -7 dB. So once again, controlling the peaks. So all the elements so far. So you can obviously tell that there's some like boring empty bits that need to be filled with sound. So that's what these things do. So this is something that I have, is this collection of just random little chopped up loops. And I have the key written down in all of them. So let's say Dad's Vinyls. This is just a sample that I have. So like literally like I'll just play the loop over and over and smash on the keyboard, and when I get something that I like, I press Shift R, which is capturing logic. So I can get the MIDI even if I didn't record it. But yeah, like here, I think we're in. Wait, are we in? We're in G sharp minor. So I would like for this one, because this is in B minor, I would pitch it down by 3, and now it's in the same key, so I can get these like little chops. Yeah, so that's sort of my method for getting all these little things. Is just like play on loop over and over and find little things that work. And then together with the riff. Yeah, so it's just like little flourishes of energy that come in. And then there's the guitar.
I guess I have a question sort of about the little like details that you fill in
Yep.
sound with. Are those? Do you have like a general idea of what you want them to sound like, or do you just experiment until it sounds good?
Well, yes and no. Like, I mean, it's kind of like I want them to be. I mean, I kind of know what kind of thing I'm going for, which is like this tight, chopped up sound. But apart from that, like I will literally just like scroll through the different sounds and experiment. But of course, like these are loops that I've been playing around with for a while, so I kind of know like this sample is going to give me this kind of sound. But yeah, it's like I have quite a lot of like just stuff from Splice as well, like some of the Oliver or the Oak stuff, which is just like, yeah, it doesn't even have to be something that you made. You could just like literally. I think most DAWs have this by now, like a sampler that will chop things up for you and has like a sensitivity slider. So I think that's a really like. You don't really have to have an idea. You can just like start jamming on the keyboard. And that's what I do most of the time. I don't really like, because it's not like there's so much detail going on here that it's not like possible for me to like come up with this beforehand and then execute it. It's like the only way to do it is to just experiment. I mean, it's not like crazy, like neurofunk level detail, but still. Yeah, it's so much stuff that like I find that the only way to do it is to just like experiment. But of course, like in the riff already, like I have this sort of like empty bits already to be filled out. So I'm kind of thinking that I'm gonna be adding them at some point. But yeah, the actual process of itself is more or less just experimentation. Cool. Yeah, the guitar. It's me playing on the guitar. And the guitar itself sounds like this. And then like just on its own, like all the processing. Yeah, it's kind of sharp sounding, so I'm turning down like 7 dB of the highs. And then some saturation and soothe, which is like automatically ducks out some of the resonances and harsher frequencies. Then some more saturation. Yeah. And some wacky EQ moves, just ducking out some of the like resonant frequencies and some more saturation. Guess this is not doing much. Yeah, it's 0, but it's still doing a little bit, and then some kickstart. The reason for this is that Logic doesn't know how to compensate for latency inducing plugins on the buses, so yeah, it's a hassle. Then the thing that makes it cool is these like, let's see, these guys. Which is like, it's a little Ultra Boy in the robot mode, which yeah, or this is just an octave below. If we just listen to this 3. So it's only on the 3rd and the 7th of the scale. Like it's on the if we're in G minor, like this is on the B, or this is on the B, yeah, and this is on the F sharp, and this is also on the B. So I'm like kind of like doing this harmony for the guitar with this. Yeah, it's kind of an yeah, nice little technique of getting like something that doesn't have a harmony, like making a harmony for it with a bunch of little Ultra Boys. And then you can also like automate these if it doesn't work with this, but like with these chords it works with just F sharp and B all the way through. And then all those and the reverb here, everything goes into the same bus, so I can add the saturation and the kickstart on it. All right. Yeah, so that's like most of it. Then like the breakdown is these chords, which is the same chords as the main progression, but just longer. And the sample in the background. Some effects or synths which come from the original. Just some more movement. There's bass that is a bit more like detuned, and it's not so like, it's not as solid as the main bass, but that's the point, is for it to like, yeah, you start feeling this tension of like things are kind of building up. And then I have a bit of Endless Smile on the breakdown bass, which kind of like just makes it a little bit thinner as it builds up towards the main section here. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I should be talking about. Here it does more or less the same thing once again. There's some new ARPs. Yeah, it's like these are just like some new layers of the same chords. And then there's the snare roll Just like building up this tension towards this sort of like big moment.
My body's in the
Yeah, I guess like that's pretty much everything. Like here on the master bus, I just have some light compression going on. Not that light. It's it's 1 dB of gain reduction, so I guess it's kind of light. Then I have some vintage warmer, which is kind of like a saturator kind of thing. Some API 2500. Just everything moves a little, but like once you combine it, like it just like makes the whole thing come together nicely. Master bus compression is hard. I still don't know what I'm doing, but yeah, I find that it's like it's not needed, but then it's worth it to try always. And if it makes the track better, then that's great. But it doesn't always make the track better, so it's not something that you should be doing all the time. But it's try it on, and if you like it, keep it. And then like if you work on the track with a compressor in the master, don't take it off when you send it to mastering. Make sure it doesn't clip, like I'm clipping here now. So I would put this on to make sure it doesn't clip. This just turns it down 1 bit, so it gets 6 dB lower. But like, if you make all the mix decisions through a plugin, like don't take the plugin off right at the end of the process. It doesn't make any sense. I think that's like all that I have to say on this one. Because I can't think of anything else that would be super important. Like, of course, there's all these vocals, but they're just audio. Have a bit of like the crushing and compression going on there, but nothing crucial. So let me know what we should do next.
I have a
Or if
quick
anybody
question.
has any questions.
I have a question.
This one.
Oh, okay. Well, I was gonna ask real quick. I'm sorry if you already went over this, but I was gonna ask if how do you process your claps in the drop when you
Let's see.
do you use a special side chains technique, or like how do you make it like pop, or what kind of tips would you say to make it pop through the mix?
Well, let's see. I mean, it's mostly about sample selection. Like, this is like, like having these different kinds of claps going on at the same time. Like, I guess like this is the secret. Is this like the Oliver top loops, because they have like such a crazy amount of energy in the high frequencies that they're the things that make it really pop through. Let's see. And also, one thing that's important is that to have things that like have a bit of like the snare comes in there, but you have these like things that have a bit of flam before the snare or the clap. I find that's a good way of like tricking you into thinking that the clap is like bigger than it actually is to like have it come in a little bit before the snare. Because that way, like when the kick and the snare come in, like you've already heard the clap, so you know that it's there, even though like it might not be very loud in the mix. So like playing around with the timing of the clap, I think is going to be really important in trying to make it like come through.
Okay.
and also, yeah, like this is the thing that I was showing earlier, like having a multi-band transient designer on the drums. That way, like, yeah, it's just like it's accentuating the It's here it's 800 to 2.4K, but it's just giving it like sort of boosting the frequencies where you would get a bit more like energy out of the clap area. But yeah, it's like a combination of things: sample selection and also the timing, and then but I'm not like really processing the samples themselves too much. So, well, I mean, this one does have some stuff on it, but it's more like a loop. So it's finding cool samples and then messing around with the timing, I think, is like the key. And then like after that, you can just put some compression and transient designer on the drum bus, and that should help. But it all starts with the sample. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah. So, the section that you have, that's just like all the random noises.
Yeah.
I was just curious if you could play the song and like just take those out.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because I sort of like did the riff with the idea that there's gonna be something in there. So yeah, it's gonna sound it. Let's listen. But yeah, like listen to like it's just like gets old pretty quickly, probably. Wait, what? Why are they still playing? Wait, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, maybe oh yeah, cool. I had low latency mode on, so it would just route everything to the main output right away. Yeah, it's kind of funny, but so it definitely adds a lot of like just excitement and energy. There's something about it being like simple like that that's kind of cool as well. Maybe I should do something more simple next time as well.
I wonder if you do you do that like in other tracks too, or is that just kind of inspiration for this one? I mean, I know a lot of your tracks kind of have like the disco. Yeah,
I mean, sometimes like I really like the sort of like micro sampling, like the sound of that. I don't do it like every single time, but sort of like this is something that I do most of the time, is like make a sample that has kind of a vintage vibe and then chop it up. Sometimes I chop it up more. This is kind of chopped up, like really chopped up. If I just played it, I mean, we can mess around with this now as long as I don't save over the old one. Like if I just did this, it would be a different sound as well. Like just play the sample as is in the background.
Parties in the basement.
Compared to this. So I guess in a way, like I'm sort of like the other one, like with the sample all the way through, it feels more like what I'm doing here. So I guess I'm just like taking out the like parts that are not in the main riff and then just like supplementing them with like more interesting textures. But yeah,
I feel like it adds so much like uniqueness to it. Like without it being there, it's I don't know. It
feels
takes
a
it
bit
to a different level.
yeah, it feels a little generic without it. Like it's
Yeah,
just the
that's-
riff. But
yeah.
then when you add like these little details, and that's like something that I would recommend is like trying to like the musical, like the riffs and stuff, or like the chord progressions. They don't need to be like groundbreaking for the thing to feel fresh. Like you just have to find like something that like feels new in a way. But like usually like for me anyway, like the things that people find the most interesting most of the time, the musical information itself is kind of simple, but then like what makes it interesting is like little details or the vocal or the sort of like the little things, but the basic idea can be pretty simple often.
Yeah, that's gold.
Let me do this so I can actually wait. Can I whatever. Yeah. But if there's let me know if there's anything else. Or
I have one.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I used to listen to like a lot of music on Newgrounds. It was mostly like electro house. But one thing I've realized now is that it didn't focus at all on groove, and the drums kind of took a back seat. So, and there's not really any focus on like movement. They just try to make the synths as like loud as possible and stuff. So like, how do you balance the two, like loudness and like movement and groove and such?
Yeah, it's a constant thing. Like I'm kind of have like you kind of have to be thinking about it at all times. I think like I remember like Marion touching on this at some. I don't remember what it was, but like he was saying that like he like as far as like these little like these kind of like riffs and stuff, like he always like sort of like tries to make sure that there's like a solid musical motif when he starts out, rather than trying to like make it all make sense afterwards. Like start with a solid idea and then work from there, and like have it. Well, here I have the chords, like the chord progression, and then I'm sort of building around that. But firstly, like the loudness, it's gonna depend a lot, but doing it in like increments, I think it's really important in trying to keep things clean. Like controlling the track level transients and like making sure all the sounds work together. I mean, what was the question? Sorry, it's super early here.
How do you like balance loudness and like the movement?
Right,
and, like,
sorry. Loudness and movement. Yeah, I guess like for me it's like movement first, and then like if there's no groove, then it doesn't make any sense. So I want to be like most of the time I will start with just the chops and maybe a kick, and like try to make that work in a way that moves in a cool way. And then like you can always bake in the loudness afterwards, but you can't bake in the groove afterwards. So I will do the bass line and the kick and the sample probably first, and then like after I have that in a place where it feels good to me, then I can start thinking about like I can maybe even just as simple as like putting a limiter on the master and turning it way up and see what starts crapping out first. If the bass starts distorting, you probably have too much bass. If you and like if you can't get it loud enough despite like turning the limiter all the way up, it might be a frequency balance issue. So let's have a look here. Luft's frequency balance or frequency chart. So this is what goes into the Luft's EQ, like internal EQ and the Luft scale. So if you want to get like a higher loudness level, like you have to, like it takes away all the low end, like the low end doesn't make any difference as far as the loudness. And then like if you boost the highest, it will sound subjectively louder. So that's what goes into this figure here. So yeah, like if you can't get it loud enough, like try saturation and clipping instead of limiting, because limiting usually just mushes things. Here I'm not doing. Oh well, here just doing saturation or like a tape kind of saturation thing. So do that, because limiting just like it just turns everything down, but saturation it clips the tops off, so you kind of like it keeps the shape of the drums, for example. It keeps it better. And then also like if it's even if you like boost the level and like saturate it, if it still doesn't feel right, it's probably an EQ thing. So then you can like start messing around, like put an EQ on the master and just like crank the highs way up, and it will feel wrong at first, but then when you listen to it for a while, like you might find that like, oh, this is actually better, but the drums are a bit too harsh, and then you can go into the drums and maybe like soften them a little bit, but keep the overall EQ. So yeah, it's like when speaking about loudness, like it's important to realize that it's like it's not really about like the level. Of course, the levels matter as well, and you have to be controlling the peaks. But like what makes it feel loud is like the frequency balance and the fact that like everything should feel balanced, and like you can't really get a loud mix if you don't have a balanced mix. So yeah, that's I guess my thinking on that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Lenno. I have a question.
Hi. Yeah.
Hi. So I'm like a huge fan of your music from a long time ago, and so like the other day I was like just listening to like Chinese pop, and then there's a song called Bunny Chapter 1, and then I thought like I thought like the instrumental is super like clean and like kind of surprising for like, because Chinese pop it isn't really like developed. Right. So I was like really surprised. So I looked up like the song credits because I thought it kind of had like a Lenno sound, and then I saw you.
Yeah. That was actually funny. Like it was a friend of mine does a lot of that stuff. Who's from the States, called Phil Schwan. And he was just like asking me for some like sample loops and like instrumentals and stuff for a while ago. And I sent him a pack, and then he, because he is like really connected in that world, so he was just sending stuff around, and then then that happened. It was kind of funny. Like I'm like, I didn't really like. I mean, I worked on the track, like the instrumental as well, but I didn't really work on the song. So it was like a kind of a surprise for me to see it as well. But yeah. That's the kind of thing. Like it's funny. Like it's like from like a Western point of view, it's hard to see that like how big these like Asian artists are now, and like Korea as well. Like it's. I mean, now it's starting to like really come to the US and Europe as well. But like it's a funny world. I didn't really like talk to any of the people. It was mostly handled by Phil, but I've done a couple of those things, and it's a fun way to like just get some music out there without like having to be the artist on it.
Oh, nice. Like I'm curious, like what the process is like, because like do you have to
it's like well, in this instance Phil is a producer himself as well, so I sent him like these tracks and samples, and then like this was one of the ones that he picked, and then he like sort of like sped it up, and it was kind of a slower one at first, but then he sped it up and added some of his own drums, and then like he has a couple of friends who write a lot of K-pop and Chinese pop as well, and J-pop and stuff like that. So he would send it to them, and then they would write the vocal in English. Two people, Jay Jean and I can't remember what the other person's name is. So they would write the vocal in English, and then the song will get pitched to a bunch of different labels and publishers, and then like Chang Chuhan's label was like, yeah, we want that, and then they would take it and have their people write the Chinese lyrics on it, and then they cut the vocal and we deliver the production to them. And yeah, that's sort of the process. So they take care of all the local lyrics, but of course it's going to have a lot of the original lyrics in there as well, because it's kind of this mixture of Chinese and English in a funny way.
That's so cool. Because like I'm really interested in like the K-pop industry.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it works most of the time, is that like the songs, I mean, they are, of course, there's a lot of like great Korean producers as well, and writers as well, but like a lot of the time the song itself will be written in English, and then they have their own, like there are a lot of people whose like sole job is to like translate the English lyrics into Korean. And it's sometimes, like I've done it a couple of times, like for different artists, and it's an interesting process. And like they kind of like try to find words that sound similar in Korean, and yeah, they're very particular about like the way it's.
That just sounds so convoluted. I had no idea that was going on.
Yeah, no, like I guess it's like they want to have access to the like songwriters of the level that we have in like, well, especially in the States, but also in Europe, like just because there's so much like songwriter expertise, but you can't really have that unless you have them write in English. So yeah, it does sound a little it is a bit convoluted, but like it's just like they don't have the same kind of like tradition for a lot of songwriters doing sort of like that kind of thing. So I guess that's the only way to do it if you want to get like Western songwriters on board as well.
It's really interesting. Yeah, speaking of like music, I guess, while we were talking about music, but like what music do you listen to for fun or like draw inspiration from?
Everything. Let's look at Spotify. Well, I mean, like, yeah, it's literally quite a lot of everything. This is just like my starred playlist. So Anderson .Paak is a big one. Frank Zappa. Well, I mean, I guess Bon Iver is sort of like one of my like all-time favorites. Then like, let's see, what do I listen to the most? I mean, do I have the Made for You on repeat? It's like, Bon Iver, D'Angelo, Jimmy Stack has been great. A lot of jazz, like John Coltrane, Duke Ellington here. But yeah, D'Angelo is one of the other ones that I've been listening to a lot lately. Like a bit of metal as well. Like being from Finland, like I used to be in a metal band, and I really enjoy like more proggy stuff. And a lot of rap. Like Anderson .Paak, here it says Kanye, 21 Savage. I'm kind of all over the place. But like I don't really listen to a lot of like, well, it's like the electronic music stuff. Like, I'm like kind of like everywhere. The only thing that I really like, I mean, like modern country, I can't really get into, but that's more or less the only thing. Like the like older, more like folky country, I'm a big fan of as well. But like I find myself doing all this, like whenever I'm working on a song, like let's see, yeah, I'm a big playlist nerd. Yeah, like here I have all these like this is a reference playlist that I did when I was working on a remix for Parson James, and this is the one that I had when I was working on a remix for Zayn. And like whenever I'm working on a song, I sort of like try and curate this sphere of things that like kind of like it's a lot of different stuff, but like yeah, from Carly Rae Jepsen to Daft Punk to like Oliver and Sebastian and Marion and Muramasa, and like I kind of like to like collect this like 29 songs that I can listen to when I'm feeling stuck, to like hear what kind of elements they were pulling in when they were working on the song.
Dang, that's really cool. How do you like keep track of all those playlists?
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can do like playlist folders in Spotify. So yeah, here I have like reference playlists that I can like you can, and like I have like future pop and new disco French house. So you can do like folders, but even then it's like yeah, it's a challenge. So yeah, I should be more organized, but I mean, Spotify does have a pretty good search thing as well. It will usually show your own playlist first, so I'll just do that. Yeah, I have to be wrapping up soon because we have an appointment or a doctor's appointment that my wife has to go to, so I have to take her there. But yeah, we have got like one more question.
Yeah, it sounded like someone else had a question.
Oh yeah. So I had a question. Like, when you use songs to like reference from, I guess, or like generate new ideas, do you ever feel like you like make ideas that kind of sound too much like the songs you're referencing?
Not really. I mean, like, because like if I listen to a song, if I'm feeling like, oh, I don't know what to add there, and then I listen to a song and they have a cowbell going on, like it's not like me like copying the idea of like putting a cowbell at like halfway through the drop, for example.
Right.
It's not gonna sound the same. I'm more like just thinking on a conceptual level, not like I'll like get an idea from there, but then like I will come up with my own riff. I won't like, but like I think that's a good way of like, if you're feeling stuck, like just like listen to a song that's not. It doesn't even have to be like a similar song to yours. It can be pretty different, but like listen to what kind of choices they made at like like halfway through the drop, or like what kind of transitions they're doing. And like when you do it from like 30 different songs, you're gonna end up with something that doesn't sound like any of them in particular.
Right.
But like don't be afraid to like, I used to do this where like I would write down all the different sections and like the lengths of them and like what kind of fills they would have, and that's a really helpful way of like when you have the musical information but like you want to expand it to a full length track. That's a really helpful way of doing that. Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that the time was already.
Yeah, no worries at all. But yeah, thank you for coming by. Definitely.
Thank you. It's been a really interesting. Because like I'm used to doing this on Twitch, but like having like actual interaction and like people going back and forth between people, like I enjoyed it even more than they like usual. So.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And if you did the recording, feel free to send me a link as well.
Also, before you go, I link your like Spotify. Is there anything else you want me to link that you want people to follow or anything like that?
I guess like Spotify and Instagram would be the two that make most sense.
Okay.
Those are the ones that active on.
Sounds good.
And Twitter maybe. Yeah, which is all.
Okay.
Hello, Lenno. All right. Have a good rest of the night, and hope this was useful to you.
Yeah, for sure.
It was.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Bye.
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 Cool. All right.